Welcome everybody to Physique Nutrition. In this section we're going to be covering carbohydrates. We're going to cover carbohydrates function, types of carbs, fiber, soluble and insoluble, the glycemic index, insulin and insulin resistance, meal timing, and carb source selection. So, what are carbohydrates? They are our primary and preferred metabolic fuel source. So when we consume carbohydrates, it's broken down into glucose and stored in the liver and skeletal muscle, and then this glucose is used to perform action, to contract skeletal muscle and to move. Carbohydrates contribute a large source of dietary fiber. It's actually considered non-essential because of gluconeogenesis, which is what happens in the liver when the liver converts other macronutrients, fats and protein, into glucose. This takes a little bit longer to happen, and this is why carbohydrates are our preferred energy source, because it's readily available. Carbohydrates provide micronutrients such as iron, B vitamins, etc. So if you were to remove an entire category or a macronutrient, like removing carbohydrates, you might find that you're short in a lot of these micronutrients like your B vitamins and iron. Carbohydrates are also extremely important in thyroid function and thyroid signaling, and T3 and T4 conversion. It provides approximately 4 calories per gram consumed. The only exception here is insoluble fiber provides 2 calories, and soluble fiber does not provide any calories. Okay, so types of carbohydrates. We have simple and complex. Basically, it's broken up into how complex the molecule is. So if it's just 1 or 2 saccharides together, then it's going to be a simple carbohydrate. That's our monosaccharides or disaccharides. Our complex carbohydrates are our oligosaccharides or our polysaccharides, which are much longer chains of these saccharides, these sugar molecules, connected together. So a complex carb will take a little bit longer to break down and become blood glucose, where the simple carbs are a little more readily available and will cause a higher blood sugar spike quicker. Okay, so fiber. There's 2 types of fiber. There's soluble and insoluble. And basically the difference is soluble fiber dissolves in water and insoluble fiber does not. And they're both important for digestion. Okay? So insoluble fiber, it becomes a thick, gooey substance that takes its time to work its way through our digestive tract. Okay, this thick, gooey substance also becomes a prebiotic and allows for a healthy gut biome in the lower digestive tract within a healthy range. So it also helps us stay full throughout the day, so it can help with some hunger signaling. Insoluble fiber does not dissolve in water, and it helps with the passage of waste. It actually helps with waste removal. This also helps us feel full. There are not any useful calories in insoluble fiber. So you need a balance of soluble and insoluble fiber for optimal digestion. Everyone is a little bit individual. Okay, so soluble fiber sources, I've listed some, and I've also listed some insoluble fiber sources. This is something that you can do a quick Google search on when you're putting together your meal plan, if you're on macros. If you're on a meal plan, then it's pre-accounted for. Okay, so there are some things like oats, for example, that are 60% insoluble and 40% soluble fiber. These are awesome foods to include in your diet because then you're getting both types of fiber with your carbohydrate source. When you consume fiber with a carbohydrate, well, that's where you get it from. That fiber actually blunts the absorption of that blood sugar, and it takes a little bit longer to get into the bloodstream, which is a positive for insulin resistance. Okay, so the glycemic index. The glycemic index is a tool for measuring how quickly a food causes a rise in your blood sugar. And essentially, they tested this on a scale from 0 to 100. What they did was they had people consume a 50 carbohydrate serving of a variety of foods, and then they measured their blood sugar levels 30 minutes after eating. And then they made comparative ratings. So a high GI essentially is digested very quickly and will produce a quick rise in blood glucose. Foods with low GI are digested slowly and produce a slow rise in blood glucose. Okay, so high GI, they're like your simple sugars. They're going to be immediately available. Low GI, they take a little bit longer to digest. This is important to know for meal timing later, because we can use these foods later. So here is a glycemic index and some examples. You can find this on the internet. It's a very quick Google search. This is the Harvard's glycemic index, their most recent published one. So you can find a variety of different things. But okay, so insulin and insulin resistance. So when we consume carbohydrates, our pancreas releases insulin. Okay, insulin is a hormone that tells cells to uptake the glucose in the blood and store it in skeletal muscle and store it in the liver. Once those stores are full, then it will be stored as body fat. So if we chronically consume large amounts of carbohydrates, especially those that are high on the GI scale, our pancreas has to continuously dump this insulin to stabilize our blood sugar. So if we chronically do this, we become deaf to that signal over time, and this is what insulin resistance is. It requires more and more insulin to perform the same job that half that insulin, say, might have been able to do before chronic overconsumption of carbohydrates. Now, if you are within your macros for 90% of people, except for our bodybuilders that are getting pretty high in food, it's pretty difficult to do this with all whole foods. So when we see this, it's typically a large amount of sugary drinks or candy, or just chronic overconsumption over time. Okay, so blood glucose testing is a good way to tell, a number of things, our daily stress, and how we react to different foods. But a good fasted blood sugar in the morning should be between 70 and 99. I typically like to see under 90. Over 90 shows typically some signs of life stress or a high general allostatic load, so you need to reduce some life stress. And then an hour after consuming about 50 grams of carbohydrates, a healthy reading, no matter where that is on the GI scale, should still be under 140. So if these readings are high, this can either indicate high life stress or some signs of insulin resistance. These aren't the only two things that it can indicate, but it's typical. So chronic insulin resistance can lead to diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and other major health factors. Fortunately, this can be mitigated over time by controlling your overall intake and choosing whole foods. Okay, so combating insulin resistance. We're going to do that through food selection, fiber, and nutrient timing. Okay, so choosing complex carbohydrates from whole food sources, primarily, including fruits and veggies, frequently get that soluble and insoluble fiber, and also the antioxidants that come with that. Fiber, 13 to 17 grams of insoluble and soluble fiber per 1,000 calories. Okay, nutrient timing. Now, nutrient timing is all about reducing the total amount of time that insulin has to be present in your blood. Okay, so we want to center our carbs around our training and then back off around our less active time. So what this might mean, so if you train in the morning, your first couple meals will be pretty high carbohydrate, and then you'll back that off later in the day if your activity level is a little lower. Now, it might be the opposite if you train in the evening. Now, the reason we're doing this is we're loading all the carbs in one direction, allowing our pancreas to work, dump that insulin, get that energy to perform the workout and recover, and then now it's backing off towards the end of the day or the opposite end of that day, giving your pancreas a break and helping out with that insulin resistance. Okay, so carbohydrate meal timing in general. So we want to center our carbohydrates around your training. A good rule of thumb is to consume about 40% of your daily carbs pre-workout and 20 to 30% post-workout. So yes, like 60 to 70% of your carbohydrates are centered around your training. Now, if you're somebody that's extremely active during the day, say you're a construction worker, then you might want to pace out your carbs a little bit differently to give you that energy that you need, especially if you're in a deficit. But otherwise, we really want to be pushing those carbs around that training time. That's when nutrient partitioning is highest, to put those carbohydrates into your skeletal muscle. Okay, carbohydrate source selection based around your time. So this is going to be, say you are going to train in the evening time. So in the morning, we want to choose a complex carbohydrate that's low on the GI, and that's going to include fiber. Pre-workout, we're looking for something medium or high GI, something that digests quickly for you. Post-workout, we're looking for something medium GI as well. You could go low GI here, but either one essentially is going to work for you. If you're someone that is combating insulin resistance, we would go low GI, but for most, we can do a medium GI here and get that digested quickly, and then low GI complex carbs for the rest of the day. And this is obviously based on the selection and not the quantity. So our quantity would be largest in the morning and around our pre-workout, post-workout. Pre-workout, post-workout would be our majority of our carbs here if we were going to train towards the morning. If you're going to train in the evening, then your pre-workout might be in the afternoon, and your post-workout meal might be your dinner. Okay, so in summary, we covered carbohydrate function. It's our primary and preferred fuel source in skeletal muscle in humans. There are simple and complex carbohydrates, and we want to use the glycemic index to identify how fast those foods are dissolved and readily digested and readily available. We covered the difference between soluble and insoluble fiber and how much fiber we need. Insulin and insulin resistance. Insulin's released by the pancreas to handle blood sugar. We covered carbohydrate meal timing, carbohydrate source selection. Thank you, everybody. Feel free to reach out with questions.